Okay, imagine this soundscape. Just relentless loudspeaker noise, bleeding across neighborhoods, DJ sets vibrating through walls, pretty much all hours.
Yeah, it sounds awful, but it's the reality for a lot of people in Andhra Pradesh.
Exactly. And what's really interesting for this deep dive is that our listener didn't just send anecdotes. We've got a formal noise pollution complaint right from Andhra Pradesh.
And not just the complaint, it's backed up with, well, a whole stack of material. The actual environmental laws, government orders, even court rulings on this stuff.
Right. So our mission for you today is to really unpack this. We want to get to the bottom of, what's driving this noise problem in Andhra Pradesh.
What are the legal protections that should be there for people?
And what solutions are actually being proposed. We're diving into all these sources, the complaint, the laws, the rulings.
The goal is to pull out the really crucial bits, the key knowledge, so you get a solid grasp of this issue.
Yeah, without getting totally bogged down in legal jargon or endless detail. Think of it as your quick path to really understanding what's going on.
Okay, so let's start with the problem itself. The complaint really paints a vivid picture, doesn't it?
It really does. It sounds like this noise is just inescapable. You've got religious events, festivals, weddings.
But it doesn't stop there. Political stuff, commercial promotions?
Yeah, loudspeakers and these massive DJ sets seem to be almost like standard issue for everything.
And it's not just certain times or places. The complaint makes it clear this is widespread across Andhra Pradesh, affecting people hundreds of meters away.
And the impact. It goes way beyond just being annoyed, right?
Oh, absolutely. The complaint details serious consequences. We're talking about people not being able to sleep properly.
Which leads to tiredness, being irritable.
Definitely. And think about students trying to study with that racket going on. How can you concentrate?
Impossible. And now with so many people working from home.
Right. Your home office becomes unbearable. Even just talking to your family gets difficult.
And the health side of it. The complaint mentions that too.
Yes, it highlights the mental agony, the frustration, which makes total sense.
And it hits vulnerable people hardest, doesn't it? Infants, older folks, people who are already ill.
Exactly. They're disproportionately burdened by this constant noise. It can seriously worsen existing conditions.
When you hear about the scale of it, the variety of sources, it really does feel like more than just a few inconsiderate people. It points towards a systemic failure.
That's a good way to put it. Like the regulations aren't working, or maybe aren't being enforced properly.
Which brings us to the next point in the complaint, this apparent lack of government action.
Yeah, it's a bit jarring. You have this escalating problem, but where's the proactive response to make sure the rules are actually followed?
The complaint asks, how effective are the monitoring systems? If the problem's getting worse, maybe they're not working.
Well, the Andhra Pradesh Pollution Control Board, the APPCB, that's the body responsible for enforcing environmental laws, including noise.
Okay.
And the complaint does acknowledge, look, the APPCB has action plans on paper for controlling noise.
On paper. That's often the catch, isn't it?
Yeah. It seems like it here, because the noise continues. So are these plans actually being implemented effectively? It doesn't look like it.
And what's really worrying is the suggestion, mentioned in the documents, that some agencies might just be ignoring it.
Even with reports of hearing loss apparently rising in the state, that's pretty serious.
So why? Why the gap between the plan and reality? Is it resources, not enough people, or equipment?
That could definitely be part of it. Enforcement costs money, takes manpower.
Or maybe it's just not seen as a top priority compared to other issues.
That's also very possible. Or maybe the strategies themselves, the way they try to enforce it, just aren't effective enough. They don't deter people.
Right. Could be a mix of all those things. It's complicated.
Understanding why is key, though, to figuring out how to fix it.
Okay, let's pivot then. Let's talk about the legal side. What laws should be preventing this?
The big one, the foundation, is the Environment Protection Act from 1986. It's a central government act.
And that covers everything environmental.
Pretty much. It gives the government really broad powers to protect and improve the environment, and that explicitly includes controlling noise pollution. The APPCB gets its authority from this act.
Okay, so that's the main law, but you mentioned specific rules too, the noise pollution rules from 2000.
Exactly. These get more specific. They're designed precisely to regulate noise sources and maintain acceptable background noise levels, ambient noise levels.
When they define key terms, I guess.
Yes, crucial ones, like authority who actually has the power to enforce these rules, like district magistrates, police commissioners.
Right.
And ARI zone. They classify areas industrial, commercial, residential, and silence zones.
Silence zones. What exactly qualifies?
The rules are clear. It's the area within 100 meters of places like hospitals, schools, courts, places needing quiet.
Makes sense. And they define nighttime.
Yep. Legally, that's 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Okay, those definitions are important for setting standards. So what are the standards? What are the actual noise limits?
They set specific decibel limits, dBA, for day and night in each zone. So, for example, residential areas.
Yeah.
The limit is 55 dBA during the day, but it drops to 45 dBA at night.
Okay, and silent zones? Even stricter.
Much stricter. 50 dBA daytime and only 40 dBA at night. These are the baseline levels that shouldn't be exceeded.
Got it. So those are the benchmarks. Now, loudspeakers, they're a big part of the complaint. What do the rules say about using them?
Big restrictions. First, you absolutely need written permission from the authority to use them publicly.
Okay, you can't just set one up.
No. And crucially, using them at night, that 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. window is banned. Flat out.
And unless
it's inside a closed space, like an auditorium, or if there's a genuine public emergency declared by the government.
Right. And breaking these rules, especially in a silent zone?
That can lead to penalties under the Maine Environment Protection Act.
So what if you're someone affected by this? The noise is way over the limit, or it's 2 a.m. What can you do?
The rules give you the right to complain if the noise is 10 decibels or more above the standard for that area.
You can file a formal complaint.
Yes, with the designated authority. And the authority also has the power to just step in and prohibit any noise source if they think it's causing a public annoyance or could cause injury.
The complaint also mentions specific Andhra Pradesh government orders, GOS. How do they fit in?
Right. GOM's 172 from 2010 is key here. It basically says who in Andhra Pradesh is responsible for what.
Assigning roles.
Exactly.
Right.
It puts the Director of Town and Country Planning in charge of the zoning side of things for noise.
And enforcement.
That falls to the police commissioners and superintendents. They're the ones meant to be implementing the rules on the ground and issuing penalties if needed.
Okay. And this isn't just environmental law, right? The Indian Penal Code, the IPC, was mentioned.
Correct. Section 268 of the IPC deals with public nuisance.
Which is?
Basically, any act that causes common injury, danger, or annoyance to the public or people living nearby.
And the argument is that constant loud noise from loudspeakers fits that definition.
Precisely. It affects a large number of people, causing annoyance and potentially harm. And if it is deemed a public nuisance,
And then what?
then Section 290 of the IPC allows for a fine to be imposed. So it's another legal tool available.
Okay, so it really sounds like the laws are there. Multiple layers, even, which just makes the situation in Andhra Pradesh seem even more puzzling.
It does, and that leads us perfectly into what the courts have said, because their pronouncements add another layer of weight here.
How significant are these court rulings?
Hugely significant. The Supreme Court, especially, has been very clear. They've stated repeatedly that the right to a noise pollution-free environment isn't just a nice-to-have, it's part of Article 21 of the Constitution.
Article 21, that's the right to life and personal liberty.
Exactly. And the courts interpret that to include the right to a dignified life, which means peace, tranquility, freedom from excessive noise.
Wow, so it's a fundamental right. The complaint mentioned a specific Supreme Court case in Ray noise pollution from 2005. What came out of that?
That was a landmark case. It led to some very specific guidelines. For instance, banning loud firecrackers between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Okay. What else?
Strict rules for loudspeakers.
Yeah.
The noise measured at the boundary of the property shouldn't be more than 10 decibels above the background level, or are 75 decibels, whichever is lower.
That's quite specific.
Very. And it also bans sound amplifiers at night, again, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., except for emergencies.
And enforcement. Did the court say anything about that?
Yes, crucially, it directed states to make laws allowing authorities to seize equipment, loudspeakers, amps, whatever, if it's being used in violation of the rules.
Seize the equipment. That's a strong measure.
Definitely meant to be a deterrent.
What about that Church of God in India case? That seemed relevant, dealing with noise from religious activities.
Yes, that's another important one. The Supreme Court made it crystal clear. Religious freedom doesn't give anyone a free pass to create noise that disturbs others' peace.
So religious activities aren't exempt if they cross the line into nuisance.
Absolutely not. The court basically said, your right to practice religion ends where your neighbor's right to peace begins. No right to blast loudspeakers just because it's a religious event.
The complaint also mentioned some high court examples. What do they add?
They just reinforce the same message, really. The Allahabad High Court apparently went so far as to ban DJs altogether.
Wow, ban them. Why?
Because they said the noise almost always exceeded the limits, and they were critical of the authorities for not enforcing the rules.
And the Bombay High Court.
They ordered police to act fast on noise complaints, even from religious places, reiterated that religion doesn't require disturbing people with loud noise. And interestingly, they said even if you use multiple loudspeakers, the total sound still can't exceed the limit.
Right. You can't cheat the system by just adding more speakers.
Exactly.
And there were some Andhra Pradesh High Court cases mentioned, too.
Yes, a few were cited just to show this isn't a new issue there. Cases like Srinivas versus Sub-Inspector referenced the noise rules. Another involved the APPCB directly. And a Telangana case, M.A. Hakim, dealt with noise from religious places, which is obviously relevant next door in AP.
So putting it all together, the legal precedent seems incredibly strong. The courts are consistently siding against excessive noise.
They really are, upholding that right to a peaceful environment.
Which makes the situation described in the complaint, the widespread noise and lack of action in Andhra Pradesh, stand out even more starkly.
Absolutely. It highlights a major gap between legal principle and practical reality.
Okay, so given that gap, let's look at the final part of the complaint. The proposed plan of action. This is what the complainants are demanding, right?
Yes, these are their specific proposals for how to actually fix the problem. Immediate actions they want taken.
All right, let's break it down. What's the first big demand?
Stricter regulations. They want a review and strengthening of the existing rules, including that GO 172 we talked about.
Strengthening how?
They want specific rules just for DJ sets, acknowledging how intrusive that bass-heavy sound can be. Clearer guidelines for getting loudspeaker permissions, strict limits on time, volume, location.
Makes sense. Anything else on regulations?
Yeah, they're pushing for mandatory sound limiters on equipment.
Right.
And even rules for loud car stereos. They want this regulatory update done within 3 months.
Okay, tighter rules, what's next? Rules are one thing, but...
Enforcement is key. That's the second major point. A robust enforcement mechanism.
How would that work?
Better coordination between the APPCB and the police, proper training for officers, giving them the right equipment like noise meters.
Dedicated teams, maybe?
Exactly. Dedicated noise pollution control teams and regular proactive inspections, not just waiting for complaints. They're suggesting 6 months to get this improved enforcement system up and running.
Right, you need people actively looking for violations. What else is in the plan?
Regular noise monitoring. A proper statewide network of monitoring stations.
Where would these be?
Especially in residential areas and those critical silence zones. They also suggest looking into newer tech, like real-time monitoring systems, maybe even acoustic cameras.
Acoustic cameras, what are they?
They can pinpoint the source of noise visually. Pretty clever. And crucially, they want all this monitoring data made public.
Transparency. So people can see the noise levels in their areas?
Exactly. Accountability. They estimate setting this up would take about 12 months.
Okay, monitoring is good. But what happens when they do catch someone breaking the rules?
That's the next point. Seizure and penalties. Immediate seizure of the equipment, the speakers, the amps, the DJ gear.
Take it away on the spot.
Yes. And hit them with significant fines, not just a slap on the wrist. And make the penalties even tougher for repeat offenders. Really create a deterrent.
That would certainly get people's attention. Are there any proactive measures proposed?
Yes. Public awareness campaigns, ongoing efforts to educate everyone about the health risks of noise, what the rules actually are, what the limits are.
Tell people their rights too.
Absolutely. Use all sorts of media, TV, radio, online, print to get the message out constantly.
Education is important. What about making it easier for people to actually report problems?
That's crucial. An accessible grievance redressal system. They want a dedicated helpline, a simple online portal for complaints.
And what happens after you complain?
Prompt action. Define timelines for investigating and resolving the issue. And importantly, protecting the identity of the complainant.
So people aren't afraid to speak up.
Exactly. They want the system ready in 3 months.
That seems vital for getting citizen buy-in. Anything else?
Just one more point. Promoting noise control best practices generally.
Like what?
Encouraging things like soundproofing in buildings, promoting responsible use of sound systems at events, maybe suggesting quieter alternatives for certain activities or equipment, just fostering a quieter culture overall, an ongoing thing.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this deep dive up. What we've seen is this pervasive, unregulated noise in Andhra Pradesh isn't just an annoyance. It's a serious problem.
Yeah, with real consequences for people's health, their well-being. And there's this clear disconnect. You've got laws, you've got court rulings saying this shouldn't happen.
But on the ground, it is happening. Widely.
And it's not like the legal foundation isn't there. The Environment Act, the noise rules, the court cases, they provide a pretty solid framework.
It really seems to boil down to implementation, doesn't it? Enforcement. That's where the gap is.
That's certainly what the complaint argues very persuasively. The laws exist, but they aren't being made real through consistent action.
And the proposed solutions we discussed, they offer this, well, really comprehensive plan. Tighter rules, better enforcement, monitoring penalties, awareness, easy reporting.
It really lays out what the complainants feel is needed to actually change the situation, to quiet things down in Andhra Pradesh.
So maybe the final thought for you, our listener, is to think about this more broadly. Think about environmental rules in general and how well they're enforced where you live.
Right. What role do we play as citizens? What role should government play in making sure these standards are upheld? Not just in Andhra Pradesh, but everywhere.
It's that constant balancing act, isn't it? Between individual freedoms like playing music, celebrating, and the collective right. Everyone has to peace and quiet.
Definitely something to reflect on. Where do we draw that line? And how do we make sure it's respected? It's a tough question, but a really important one.